right, thank you everyone for joining us again. I'll just get everyone to take their seats and ask for silence now. I'd like to introduce Max to talk about people, partnerships and predator control, rebuilding biodiversity in a working landscape.
All right, thanks Anna. So the landscape that I'm going to be talking about today is called Gurunda by the Narungga people of South Australia. It's what they call their country, or Bungara, and it's a scenic peninsula that's nestled between the two gulfs of South Australia, and it generously provided for 4 Narungga clans ample food from the land and from the ocean, and fresh water was available through soaks, rock pools and underground water, which was identified by plants that were growing nearby. So for many thousands of years, Gurunda supported its people, and today the Narungga people have a continued strong spiritual and cultural connection to country. So I'd just like to acknowledge that connection to country and acknowledge the Narungga people whose land the project is taking place on, and also would like to acknowledge the Kombumerri people who we're meeting today and pass that respect on to elders past, present and future. Also like to pay my respects to other Aboriginal people and Torres Strait and South Sea Islander people that are here today. So here's the Yorke Peninsula. Adelaide's sort of about here, and Gurunda goes from the Broughton River to the Wakefield River and all the way down to the toe of the peninsula, Dilba-Gurunda International Park. And the Mana Bungara project that I'll be talking about today takes place here on the foot of the peninsula. Now, if you haven't heard about Mana Bungara, it's a restoration initiative that's aiming to reintroduce locally extinct species to rejuvenate ecological processes in a working landscape where agriculture, community and conservation coexist. So it's our rewilding project of sorts. So why do we need a landscape restoration initiative? Because across Australia and across the world, that land clearance has been one of the major drivers of biodiversity decline. And on Yorke Peninsula, that clearing took place post-World Wars, when agriculture was expanding and to feed and rebuild the country and also the world. And when you look at the peninsula today, you see a pretty productive agricultural space that's been shaped by many generations of hard work. And that landscape that we've grown to rely on today has come at a bit of a cost. So on the bottom end of the peninsula where the project is, about 1/3 of the native vegetation remains. As you go north, even less so. And it's with that loss that we've also lost much of the original biodiversity. So that's why protecting what we've got left and carefully restoring what we can is so important. So from above, you can see these swaths of intact native vegetation, this sort of mallee community. And when you get on ground, you can see that all the structures are pretty connected and they're quite intact. So you've got your shrub layer and your ground covers. So this is where the opportunity is for us, because all that dense vegetation provides fantastic habitat for wildlife. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an understanding of the landscape that I'm talking about. And so how do we get to working into it? So a little while ago, the Northern and Yorke Landscape Board implemented the Open Standards methodology of conservation action planning. And it had a real focus on the community input. So the community and the conservation elements were rolled into the CAP process. So why do we use CAP? We use it because it's a systematic approach to managing landscapes. It works on where we should focus our attention, what we need to do, how we should do it, and when we've taken action, how successful we've been. So it brings community members, landholders, subject matter experts, government, non-government organisations and First Nations to the table to discuss the area of interest and work on practical solutions, drawing on knowledge in the room. So part of the CAP process is to analyse the threats and the assets. So threats such as invasive species or species missing from a landscape that once provided an ecological service, and assets such as remnant vegetation or a diverse working landscape. And the what and how looks at reducing the impacts of the threats and or just improving the assets. So together we work out where we need to focus, and as we worked on the what and the how, a few aims started to develop. So we wanted to restore ecological function, we wanted to look at returning native species, we wanted to look at predator control, and we also wanted to look at flow-on effects to the community. And it's with that that the Mana Bungarra project started to take shape. So Mana Bungarra, named to honour the Narungga people. So Mana in language means healthy or prosperous, and Bungarra, as mentioned before, means country. So it's healthy, prosperous country. And the primary objective is to restore ecological functions through returning native species that were once integral to the region's biodiversity. So that's our rewilding angle. How do we do that? By mitigating threats from invasive species, enhancing habitat quality, and fostering community and stakeholder engagement for those sustainable conservation outcomes. So in our team, we talk about these three pillars holding up the vision or the aim of healthy, prosperous country. So we've got introduce predator control, biodiversity, and the community and stakeholder engagement as our pillars. So the first one with predator control, that's the landscape scale program that looks at controlling foxes and cats to reduce their impacts across public and private land. The second is the biodiversity angle. This is where science and monitoring really drive us. So we're guided by recovery teams, government and non-government organisations, and First Nations knowledge. And the third one is the community and stakeholder engagement. So currently this is where a lot of my role is, and it's about facilitating collaboration and building those partnerships between all involved. So each pillar involves a lot of work, which I'll get into now, starting with the people. It's pretty obvious at a big conference like this and with everybody in the room how important people are to the land care side of things. So every volunteer who contributes an observation or their experience, every landholder who manages scrub on their block or removes a pest animal species from the landscape, or every Narungga person who shares their cultural knowledge, each person adds a piece to the bigger puzzle. So it starts with individuals, each making their own contribution. Then they connect around a shared goal, forming groups. Those groups grow into a community, and that community is what gives Mana Bungarra what makes it possible. So our role through the Mana Bungarra team and the Northern and Yorke Landscape Board is to help connect those pieces, supporting individuals, supporting the community groups, and keep everyone moving towards the same goal. And when that happens, the benefits ripple outwards. You get healthier farms, more wildlife, and connection for people and place. So this project works because the individuals, they don't go it alone. They team up, and the partnerships are what give Mana Bungarra its strength and its reach. One of the examples of the partnerships of the project was the cultural exchange between the Narungga and Noongar peoples, which brought together locals, government agencies, NGOs like WWF Australia and Zoos SA for the safe translocation of brush-tailed bettongs from WA to SA. So each partner brings a different strength, cultural leadership, scientific expertise and on-ground support. Another example is the partnership between BirdLife Australia and the Friends of Hooded Plover Yorke Peninsula for monitoring the hoodies on Gurunda. So the partnerships widen the base so that when challenges come, and they always do, the project doesn't stand on one leg, it stands on many. So from people and partnerships, we'll move on to the practical backbone of the project, predator control. So if there's one lesson from Mana Bungarra, it's this: you can't rebuild biodiversity without tackling the introduced predators first. Feral cats and foxes are relentless, and if they go unchecked, they'll undermine everything else you're trying to achieve. So that's why our strategic predator management underpins everything that we're doing. Strategic in the sense that it's planned out, landscape-wide across private and public land, and adaptive because not every technique works everywhere. For me, it's another great example of people working together towards a common outcome. The predator control that happens in this project area across the landscape is pretty inspirational. So what's unique is the project helps coordinate across the whole landscape. Farmers who bait, trap or shoot to protect livestock. The national parks, the wildlife rangers do their control programs on National Park and Conservation Park Estate. The Northern Yorke Landscape Board and the Mana Bungarra project team does their baiting and trapping programs off-park. And then we also support community groups with their trapping programs. So everyone's pulling together. Then we incorporate skills and knowledge from local landholders and integrate the technologies such as your Celium trap alert system and your Felixes, and also remote sense cameras that are run through AI recognition. So if anyone saw the talk from the Kangaroo Island Landscape Board, there's a lot of similarities, and it's really great to work with our partners, across the pond on KI. So then we're able to adapt to seasonal changes or any other changes that are happening in the landscape. So our aim is to keep it strategic, adaptive and collaborative, and it's already improving odds for species like the hooded plover and the brush-tailed bettong. So now the exciting part, restoring biodiversity and reintroducing species. This is where all the work comes together. The return of the Yorke, or the brush-tailed bettong, an EPBC listed species that was missing on Gurunda for over 100 years. And since 2021, we've reintroduced nearly 200 of these animals. Already we're seeing new generations born. With the last monitoring, there was about 2/3 that were born on the southern Yorke Peninsula, which demonstrates that they're doing everything right in their new home, and 1/3 being individuals that were translocated, so showing their survivorship. So the bettongs just aren't cute and furry, they're soil engineers. As they forage for food, they dig, they turn over soil, they increase the permeability, help break down the organic matter, and then they spread seeds and spores as they're doing that. So you could say that they're your natural land carers. The bettongs used to inhabit a large area of southern Australia, and by bringing them back, we're restoring the ecological functions that they would have provided to the environment. So this is our rewilding in action. Science, culture and community all working together. And the benefits don't stop with one species. So the malleefowl in the project area are doing pretty well. Their populations appear quite stable, and they're monitored on a yearly and 5-yearly basis. So if you don't know about the malleefowl, really cryptic species, builds a mound, composts to incubate its eggs. And with the help of LiDAR technology, we've mapped hundreds of mounds in dense scrub which we didn't know about, giving us a greater understanding of their distribution in the area. Hooded plover population on the peninsula is benefiting from fox control and community vigilance, which is important because at the last biennial count in November last year saw 327 adults counted on the peninsula, so that's about 45% of the SA population on the Yorke and about 10.6% of the whole entire eastern subspecies. So that's pretty cool. And beyond that, the malleefowl and the hooded plover are indicator and umbrella species. And beyond them, we've got a whole bunch of other species that are benefiting from this work. So we've got more ground and beach nesting birds reappearing and lots more reptiles showing up as well. So birds like the bushstone curlew showing up on our remote sense cameras, and heath goannas are surviving to a size where they can defend themselves against a cat or a fox. And one of my other favourites that's showing up more often is the western blue-tongued lizard. So that tells us that the system is responding, and these interventions are creating broader landscape scale benefits. As a team, we often talk about the challenges and learnings being some of the most useful information to come out of conferences. I'm not saying our project is unique in facing these challenges, but if this next section highlights some things for consideration for anyone new working in the land care space or anyone that's working in a land care organisational capacity, my advice is prepare for as much as you can and be adaptive as possible. So when key people move on, conversations and networks can be lost and momentum can slow. Landholders can change, people can move away from areas, people change jobs, they retire, they change roles, and even sadly they can pass away, so it can be tricky to manage. Thus, the wide base of partnerships is really important. The large range of stakeholders and the diverse community we've got is amazing, but it can also be quite tricky to manage, as not everyone agrees all the time. There can be a change of direction in an organisation or government, which again can slow momentum. And global pandemics and global conflicts had implications on our project over the last few years. I'm thankful we weren't directly impacted, and my heart goes out to people that are directly impacted. And it's a stark reminder of our global connectedness. Things happening on the other side of the world or worldwide may impact on what you're trying to do in your local patch. So harsh climate, again, not unique to us, but impacts such as drought and fire in the landscape and the emotional strain it can put on a community. We've had implications and considerations for bird flu, not only for our threatened birds in the project area, but also for its potential spread to other wildlife and livestock. South Australia has been going through the harmful algal bloom since the start of the year, which is decimating a whole bunch of the sea life in the Gulf areas. And that sea life's washing up dead on the coastline, which then is a potential free food source for the introduced predators that we're trying to manage. And as scavenging species, that can be tricky for us to manage too. So predators. Foxes are really cunning and cats are really smart, so we're constantly working on their potential reinvasion into the project area. Although it's a challenge, it's an exciting challenge, and we've got a good team working in this space. There's also a commitment of timekeeping up with legislation requirements, for example, permits, ethics and welfare considerations when it comes to working with animals. We're being technologically challenged. So new tech is great, it's a great opportunity. Can cost a bit of money to get up and going, and there is elements of uncertainty too. Tech in the field is great that it's out there 24/7, and its contribution to the project is oodles of data. So there's that challenge to manage. And anyone that's worked with tech in the field can know how great it is when it works and how much of a pain it can be when it doesn't. So most of these challenges are time related for us, but there's also the dollar figure and what it costs financially. And the challenge is to keep the cost down. We've got a good team that does this and a lot of expertise that helps with keeping costs down. We're fortunate enough to be funded by TQ's Natural Heritage Trust and also the Northern and Yorke Landscape Board to do this work. And we've also got some in-kind cash contributions and heaps of in-kind time contribution from our partner organisations. So if there's anything I'm talking about today that piques any interest, please reach out or please come see me today. So what we've learned. Listening to the First Nations panel this morning sums up in that time what I've tried to put here in a dot point. But working with Narungga and Noongar on the translocation of bettongs between W and ASA has been one of the most rewarding parts of my career. It added a level of depth to the whole translocation process and the project. So it does take time to connect and work through the process and to do it respectfully. So take that time, allow the time and make the time. Planning, start as early as you can with planning. I think this is applicable to most projects. Expect to meet obstacles and be prepared to tackle them. If feral cats and foxes are an issue for you on your project, know what techniques are available to you and be prepared to have to change tactics. Technology is amazing and there is new stuff coming out all the time. If you can use it in your project to make your life easier, great, but don't overlook the human input required to get it up and going, to maintain or to manage your tech teammate. So looking ahead, we're preparing for the next steps of Marnabunga. Our project ecologist Claire is working on the next translocation species in the pipeline, so whittling down a long list of potential candidates to a short list of feasible candidates. It's a long road ahead, but an exciting step for us. We'll also continue strengthening relationships with Narungga and the wider community, because these relationships are at the heart of it all for us. Monitoring will remain a key part of our work. More cameras, more surveys, more tracking. It keeps us honest and tells us what's working and where we need to adjust. Predators, as mentioned, it's an ongoing challenge, but we're adapting, always refining how we tackle feral cats and foxes and to reduce their impact. And finally, we'll be testing and integrating new technology into the project, making sure that we've got the best tools to support the future of Gurunda. So working together does make this possible, and it is happening. Locally, our call to action for community is to get involved however they can, as we've got a shared responsibility to look after what we've got. Further afield, we encourage land carers to consider similar collaborative approaches in their area, fostering partnerships with First Nations communities and local stakeholders to enhance biodiversity outcomes. And we hope sharing lessons learned from Marnabunga can inform and inspire future generations and restoration projects across Australia and beyond. So as I said before, please reach out to talk more. I've only glazed over some of the topics that the project tackles, and there's a lot more depth to each one of those topics. I'd just like to thank all the partners on the project, and we've been going for about 7 years now, so there's been a lot of people that have come in and out of the project and contributed time, expertise, experiences. And I'm up here talking about the project today, and the rest of the team is out in the field doing monitoring and predator control, so a big shout out to them. And yeah, that's me done.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for that, Max. I'm sure if anyone has any questions, you can catch up with him a bit later.
Yep.
We're now going to move on to our next session. So if anyone would like to change room, now is your opportunity.